生殖機能を取り戻すためにあなた方のバナナが欲しいのです。今からセックスします。
What the fuck?
おっぱい吸わせてやるからよ。めっちゃもっとしゃぶらせろ。
Is Dandadan the weirdest anime I've ever seen? We're gonna try to answer that question in this video. Welcome back, everyone. I don't always talk about anime, but when I do, it tends to be some pretty weird ones. Although admittedly, I feel like a lot of animes are pretty weird. This is definitely one of those animes. Is it the weirdest one though? Let's find out. First of all, a heads up, spoiler warning ahead. We're going to be talking about the first 5 episodes of Dandadan. That's what I've watched up to this point. What is this anime about? If I had to give you a summary, if I had to give you a little synopsis, it's about these two friends that I think have a crush on each other, but we'll talk about that later. So these two friends, and they initially are strangers. They end up becoming friends after they bond over their love of aliens and supernatural stuff, where one of them believes that ghosts are real and wants to prove it, and the other believes that aliens are real and wants to prove it. The main characters are Momo, the person that knows about the spirits and the ghosts, and of course, Okuran, or Takakura-ken desu. So they dare each other to basically go to these spots that they know are hot spots for the other. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, at the same time, they both discover that both are actually real as they encounter them. They then go on a series of wacky adventures that lead into each other, where they are forced to deal with the consequences of discovering that both aliens and spirits are indeed real. I initially was not sure what to make of this show. I watched episode 1 and I felt kind of weird because it made me question how I feel about the show in terms of the way that the teen characters are somewhat depicted, especially with the fact that Momo in the first one is accosted by aliens and basically assaulted by aliens. That's a whole thing that happens. The whole premise of even what happens with Okuran is kind of messed up in the sense that he goes to meet this spirit that is Turbo Granny and she wants his weenie. So in episode 1, we have a granny spirit that wants a teenage boy's weenie, and we have aliens that want Momo's bananas. So that's where we start. And I was like, what am I watching? What is this that I've gotten myself into? This is an element that does come up. However, I do think there is an earnestness and honesty to this show that is admirable. And although I think some of this is sort of problematic, it does feel very realistic in the way that it depicts teens. And let's be real, when we were teenagers, it is a time of discovery. But my whole idea behind this is just that it felt awkward to me, but I think the point is that it's supposed to feel awkward. This is an awkward teen anime, and they really nail that element of it, I will say. Even though there is some weird choices that are made. But it does fit the tone. Speaking of the tone, what is this tone like? Well, it's interesting because it's really weird, but it's also kind of balanced with some slice of life, more grounded elements of the characters, and their relationships, I think, is what really makes this show compelling. Momo and her grandmother, who I love and I want to do a cosplay of. But the other relationship that is key here, the main relationship I would say, is between Momo and Okuran, which feels very real to this idea when you kind of, have a crush on someone, you're friends with someone, and you're trying to navigate just how to tell someone you like them. It's really awkward. And there's a lot of moments in this that I think are beautifully illustrated throughout, not just the characters and the voice acting and all of that, but also just the visuals, the animation, a lot of choices in that regard. Honestly, the weirdness of this reminds me a lot of Chainsaw Man too, and especially with that sort of more grounded idea, but in this world where everything is going crazy, that is very Chainsaw Man. And that is something I really like about it. I love Chainsaw Man, in case you didn't know. Cheetah. Anyways, still waiting for that season 2 Chainsaw Man. When's that happening? When's the movie happening? In Dandadan, we also have amazing animation fight sequences. There's amazing music choices here. There's the classical music in the chase scene when they're doing their face-off with Turbo Granny is fantastic. And it's not just in the music in the show, it's also in the music in the opening credits. Can we talk about the opening credits for a second? How are we going to top these opening credits? I have to know, because I feel like these opening credits are so good. This song is stuck in my head all the time. It's stuck in my head right now as I'm doing this video, and I just love it. I don't know how we're going to get a better intro sequence, honestly, for season 2. The other thing that I love about this show is that when it comes to how real these characters feel, it goes beyond just the way that they're depicted. It's also the way that we see the characters, the character designs, which I think are amazing and super compelling. They're nuanced in what they say about the characters. There's a certain style to them. They also just look cool, you know, but there's just little elements that make you want to cosplay them because their whole look says so much about who the character is. Especially when it comes to Momo's grandmother, I really love her whole look. She's just this like really cool, kind of young feeling granny. And when it comes to even Momo's look, she's got this cool, kind of cute look to her. And she also has this attitude to her, but it's not presumptuous. It's not an attitude that makes you feel like, oh, she's like ungrateful. It just feels very real. There's an angstiness, a sassiness that you don't often see, especially in female characters in shows. Like if they're mean, then they're just like, you know, the worst. And if they're not mean, they're usually very sweet, very cute, especially in animes. I feel like having a character that's this nuanced as a female lead is really impressive, honestly. The more I think about it, the more I'm impressed with it. The amazing thing about Dandadan as well is not just in the levels that we have in this tone and this balance, but we also play with a lot of the tropes and expectations. We set things up in this show. There's a lot of setups for this is the moment where we're about to have, you know, this big face-off, this big fight. I mean, Okuran facing off against the sumo wrestling alien is a whole element. It is a whole vibe. Just this idea that in this form, he is ready. After doing this super cool thing where he removes the alien's fingers, preparing for this epic face-off, and then he just throws up. And you're like, oh, that's so great, because I thought I knew where that was going and I didn't. And there's a lot of elements of that in this show. You think you know what's about to happen and you really don't. I like the off-the-world choices that we have too. Like there's a desperation and a wildness in the show. You never know what's going to happen. You turn around and Okuran is suddenly biting Granny's teat. That's a thing that happened. It's not afraid to get serious and create real grounding moments. Like the other thing, Turbo Granny is this villain that we meet, and it's later established that the reason that Turbo Granny haunts that tunnel is because it's a place where there were a lot of young women who are mistreated and killed. And so she is actually kind of a protector, a comfort for young women's spirits, and she wants to guide them. It makes me wonder if also why when Turbo Granny comes through the phone, when Okuran is actually possessed, so she has control at that time. So it really is her choice, you would think, to come through the phone, not Okuran's, to save Momo in episode 1. If that's actually in relation to the fact that Turbo Granny is this protector of women and she knows that Momo is in danger and she wants to protect her. So it adds just a lot of layers. This isn't just weird for the sake of being weird. There's always more going on than you think. And that is something I really appreciate about this anime. And, you know, also probably about the manga. I haven't read the manga. Shout outs to Yukinobu Tatsu, who is the mangaka for Dandadan, because there's so many elements. I heard that apparently Tatsu read a bunch of mangas. He had basically been like submitting a bunch of stuff. Nothing was sticking. And so he was told by his editor, I think, like, you need to read a bunch of manga because you do not know how people are. And you need to learn about the humanity element so that you can write that better. So he read like hundreds or something of manga to prepare and then gave us Dandadan. And it's great. It's great. I mean, also a mangaka that worked on, you know, Fire Punch, and I believe also Chainsaw Man as an assistant. So there's a lot of crossover there. I mean, I haven't read Fire Punch, but I know of Fire Punch. I will never read Fire Punch. I don't need to. A description was enough of what happens in that. That one's real messed up. Honestly, this is just a show that I think is really fun because I don't know, like I said, where it's going to go. And it does have these beautiful human moments when both Okuran and Momo want to talk to each other and they can't find each other on their lunch break and they just think the other person is avoiding them and they think, wow, the other person just does not want to hang out with me. No one likes me. They obviously were put off by me in some way. And then they finally run into each other and then they go into a fight when they're saying goodbye to each other. And they're both trying to figure out how to say goodbye because when they say goodbye, it feels so final and they don't want it to feel that way. And then Momo takes the initiative to say, I'll see you tomorrow. These are little things that are just so heartwarming in a way in an anime that is weird where people are having their bananas and their weenies threatened. I also really wanted to know what was going on with the cat in this. Obviously, you see the cat in the title sequence. And I am very happy to find out that in episode 5, before I finished and was ready to sit down and do this video and just talk to you a little bit about my thoughts on Dandadan, that we actually got the answer to that question. I can't wait to see what they do with that moving forward. The fact that Turbo Granny is actually possessing this lucky cat. I feel like that is a whole... so many antics, and I'm glad that we didn't lose Turbo Granny, okay? Because I really did love her. I was actually sad when she was defeated and she was gone. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a bummer. So I'm glad that there was still a piece of her left and we get to have her as probably part of the gang. You know, this is the only anime as well where I can talk about granny on granny action, where we have Momo's granny versus Turbo Granny, which is a whole element of it. And then you go online and you're talking about that and you're like, what is Dandadan? It's the only anime out there that'll give you that granny on granny action that you need. This is also the type of anime and manga that I really like because we're not just exploring these characters and their relationships and their journey through the supernatural and through the cosmic world, but we're also getting to explore actual spirits, aliens in the world as well and build the world that way. And there's so much care and detail that's put into the design of these beings that we encounter. And I love the lore elements of exploring just the world, like all the different spirits that we could meet, all the different aliens that we could meet. I'm very excited for this. When it comes down to it, I'm excited to see where this anime goes next, and I'm really liking it. I mean, this isn't technically a formal review video, but I think if I had to give it some stars, I think I'd give it a 4 out of 5 right now, and I think it has the potential to become beyond even a 5 out of 5, because I'm really liking it, and I just see a lot that it could be building towards. There's going to be some big moments as we get to know all of these characters more. Also, I hope we find out who Okuran's parents are. I hope they're in it at some point. I think that would be fun. So, the ultimate question though is this the weirdest anime I've seen? Well, I've definitely seen some pretty weird stuff when it comes to anime. I've seen some things, you know, but I think this is maybe not the weirdest anime I've seen, but it's up there. It's up there. I still think for me, in terms of weird animes that aren't weird in a way that makes me not want to watch the anime, Chainsaw Man is the weirdest that I've seen. I just think explaining that anime to people is it's just weird to do. It's just weird. But I believe that Dandadan could actually be weirder than Chainsaw Man, and I would like to challenge it to be weirder than Chainsaw Man. Be weirder, because I believe in your weirdness, Dandadan, and I am here for your weirdness, and I cannot wait to see where it takes us next. Let me know what you're thinking of Dandadan. Have you been watching it? Have you been hyped about it? Are you here for me doing a Momo or a Granny cosplay? Or should I do Turbo Granny? Tell me what you think. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. I want to discuss with you guys about this anime. And let me know what other animes you're watching, if there's anything you would recommend. I'm always looking for new animes to jump into, new mangas to read, so please do suggest. I have been reading a ton of One Piece, so I will be doing a series of One Piece videos as well as I'm going through the manga. So if you like that type of stuff, make sure you hit that subscribe, stick around, and there'll be more One Piece content for you soon. Thank you so much for watching this video, as always. I'll see you next time, and until then, friends, stay nerdy.